I'm Kim.
I'm Brittany.
We are from FredHeads, the documentary.
Happy Women in Horror Month.
You are listening to Elm Street Radio.
Hey Elm Street fans, Diandra here. I'm whispering because Mark, my boyfriend, is playing Friday the 13th, the game, which is totally awesome. I would love to see a nightmare game like this. And I kind of get sucked in. But in any case, we are at the end of Women in Horror Month, which is a month dedicated to all the fabulous women leaving their mark in the horror world, or who have already left their mark in the horror world. And even though there is a month dedicated to it, we believe it should be every day, all day, forever. Just celebrating filmmakers, fans, and like I said, anybody leaving their mark. Oh, you probably hear the video game in the background. In this episode, celebrating women in horror, we have Brittany Heil and Kim Gunzinger of FredHeads, the documentary, on, along with myself. FredHeads is really a female-driven documentary, and we felt it best to celebrate women in horror with some of our very own, very influential women in the horror world. So, without further ado, let's get into the show.
These are my children, Jason. Go back where you belong.
Welcome our guests, Kim Gunzinger and Brittany Heil, two of the biggest FredHeads I know, of course involved in the FredHeads documentary, and two really kick-ass women in the horror world. So welcome to Elm Street Radio, Brittany and Kim.
Aw, thank you for having us.
Hey.
Well, Brittany, you've been here before, but Kim hasn't. So, Kim, if you want to give a little introduction to everybody of kind of maybe your backstory around A Nightmare on Elm Street, and how you got into it. I know you have a really good story with Monster Mania, but if you kind of want to, just give a little tease, because I know some of it's going to be revealed in FredHeads, so...
Of course. No, I've always loved Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, it's... Growing up, my parents were pretty strict on the non-horror rule, and every now and then, my dad would, you want to see a scary movie, and I'd be like, yeah, and it was like a thing. So of course, when I was able to get away with, watching horror movies without my parents' supervision, all I ever wanted to do was watch horror. So. I just, Freddy has always been my top favorite out of all of them I ever watched. Growing up, my best friend Jess and I, we would rent them all and have marathons, and we'd watch Monster Vision, Joe Bob Briggs Saturday night, and it wasn't until much later, when I was in my 20s, that I found horror conventions. Specifically Monster Mania. I was flipping through my Fangoria magazine, and there's this little article, and it was like, just this tiny little corner, and it was like, do you want to meet Freddy Krueger? And I literally found myself talking to the magazine why, yes, I do. How do I do this? And it was this, advertisement for Monster Mania, and I made this big stink. I was like, oh my God, you guys, we gotta go. And we got 3 carloads of people, all caravanning up from Virginia to Cherry Hill, New Jersey to go check it out. And it was just phenomenal. It changed my life. So it's my love for Freddy brought me to the horror conventions, which brought me to some of my closest friends, and including you, Diandra, and Brittany. So it's definitely changed my life.
It's pretty amazing to think about that. And I think I've said this every single episode, but just how going to these conventions, because I think everybody, to a certain extent, in horror, or a lot of people feel, I know that I've heard many people express, there's nobody in my area that likes horror movies. I'm kind of alone. And then all of a sudden you meet these people online, and then you go to them in person, and it's like you've known them forever, and they're just, you could just walk up to somebody and just strike up a conversation with them. No matter maybe certain levels of social anxiety throughout life, suddenly you go to a horror convention, you just kind of, it dissipates a little bit, even maybe a lot, who knows, and you're just able to talk to anybody there and just to make friends, and it's a pretty amazing thing.
Well, that's funny that you mentioned social anxiety, because I actually really do have social anxiety. So, I mean, there are times even at the conventions when, they get really crowded at certain times, I start to shake because I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's so many people around me. But for the most part, I do feel more at home. I do feel, like these people aren't judging me. They're all just like me. We all have the same things in common, and they're just the nicest people. But and I know for Paige, like, FredHeads really came about for her because she met all of us, and it really changed her life. And she, heard all our stories and how it changed our lives. And that kind of just sparked the idea for FredHeads in general. Like, we're not the only people out there who have this story because of this, love of this movie.
Yeah.
That's so, yeah. I mean, it's just like, obviously I'm right there with you guys. I mean, I've kind of touched on this in a couple different podcasts, and for FredHeads of the doc, of course. But I mean, because of conventions, and because of, Nightmare on Elm Street, and because of Jennifer Rubin, I've met two of my absolute best friends, and it all started with a t-shirt, me complimenting my friend's t-shirt, Sandy, you know what I mean? And that was Jennifer Rubin's handler. And then from there, it was kind of like, it built this crazy friendship relationship. And it's just one of those things where, I don't know, if you would have told me that when I was a kid, that this is how my life would be, I'd have been like, yeah, right. You're crazy.
Yeah. And even, but like Kim and my story is kind of interesting. It's just one of those off the cuff things. So my good friend growing up, well, mostly through high school, she was in a play with Kim, and or rather a musical.
Amadeus.
Yeah. And she was like, and I can't remember. I know she talked to Kim, but then she told me about Kim, and I was like, no way, she likes horror? Oh, that's so cool. And then I think we linked up online, and maybe right after that we found out we were both at Horror Hound in 2012, and we had like a short interaction there. Like, she had said something to me, and I was like, oh, thanks. But
yeah, I passed by you, and you were, full-fledged Nancy, and I was like, oh my God, that's so badass. And you were like, thanks. And that was like literally in passing, because that was actually my very first Midwest convention. Because I moved out to Ohio from Virginia in the beginning of 2011. And that first year, I was so depressed because I missed the conventions and I missed my friends. And good old Jeremy was like, dude, Horror Hound is like right around the corner from you. And I'm like, no, what is this? So he was like, go check it out. And that was the first one that I went to out here.
That's nice. That is
I'm
so
hooked.
amazing. I know. It's like the drug. It's the only drug I need.
It is.
It's a good drug.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Be a little expensive, but
Yep, that's for sure. Might need some counseling. But, so, FredHeads. I mean, we all have our own story, but FredHeads is, as we're here in Women in Horror Month, which is all about the women, not only who make things in horror, but who love horror. Just women who have made a difference or making an impact or leaving their mark somehow in the world of horror. And FredHeads is completely, pretty much, I mean, yes, we do have guys involved, but it is really women driven. I mean, we have a ton of women behind the scenes. I mean, you, Kim, you are just out there constantly working on stuff. Paige, of course, is, you know, behind the camera and out there collaborating with you. We have Brittany on the team. I'm on the team. There's Crystal. There's Taylor. There's Maddie. There's and oh, I'm sorry. Who did you say?
Oh, Maddie.
Yeah. Like, we have all of these women who are a part of it, and such strong females who love A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I mean, love A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I think it's pretty incredible, because when I think there was a story that Robert Englund was talking about when he was saying something about how, or somebody, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but there was somebody out there who was talking about how they were seeing a lot of guy fans. And then as time went on, within the last couple of years, there were like just as many females. And then there were slightly more females. Now there's a ton of females also out there with the guys. And there are, I mean, I think, you know, there are still a lot of men out there who make horror. There are women, but I think the guys are usually more so in the spotlight, in the higher positions. But FredHeads is incredible. I mean, in my humble opinion, the biggest horror franchise. Now, I know there's a couple of the other ones, but I was talking to Mark, and he described it best to me. He said that his favorite franchise is Friday the 13th. He will die on the sword for Friday the 13th. But he said, FredHeads are unlike anything he has ever seen before. He said, we are like rock stars. I mean, we are like rock and roll fans, and like Freddy Krueger in A Nightmare on Elm Street is like our rock band. Like, we're out there like screaming, and we're super passionate, and we'll go rowdy. We'll just get covered up in the merchandise and just go nuts and do stuff for this. It's all creative. I mean, we're just this incredible fandom, and I personally don't know that much about what the fandom's like for Halloween or for the rest of like Friday the 13th or anything like that, but I really see this passion come through with A Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, what do you guys think?
I mean,
oh yeah, go ahead.
I don't know. Sorry, Britt, you go ahead.
No. Well, okay. I was just gonna say, I think each fandom is well, obviously those three are the biggest fandoms in the horror genre, right? Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street. But I think with Nightmare on Elm Street, I don't know if it's necessarily the biggest. I would like to think it's the biggest because obviously it's my favorite. But I think it's the most unique, and I think what you said, the fans are the most, they are the most passionate, and I see that at conventions personally myself, because I've seen a bajillion different cosplays from the Nightmare on Elm Street series, not just Freddy, but Nancy. I've seen Tina. I've seen Debbie. I've seen Taryn. You know what I mean? And then if you look at Friday the 13th and you look at Halloween, you know who I see? I see Michael and I see Jason.
And maybe the occasional Pamela, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's true. Right. So I think, and that kind of speaks volumes. It's not just Freddy. It's the characters. And I will always say that. I love Freddy, don't get me wrong. But it's the characters that make the franchise, which is in turn what I think makes fans relate to it more than Halloween and more than Friday the 13th. And like I said, I love both those series too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say, of course, like what Brittany was saying, like, for me personally, I think it's bigger, but at the same time, the other franchises have such a huge following.
They're huge.
And I mean, even like Halloween, you know, you were going on 40 years, you know, and there's been so many movies, and then you got the Rob Zombie movies, you know, now we've got like another movie coming out. So, you know, I think Halloween, because it's just been around longer, and it's, you know, even like the music is so iconic from it, I think that probably stands bigger. But when it comes to the characters, I think people relate more to the Nightmare characters. you know what I mean? I don't know. It's like a touchy subject because I don't want to piss like any horror franchise fans off.
I
Because I love them all.
give a crap.
And then of course there's like, you know, the beloved like Phantasm, and then there's beloved Hellraisers, and then the Leatherfaces, and they're all just, you know, everybody has their own niche. But for me personally, it's, I mean, what can I say? Freddy is the man of my dreams.
No, I mean, you're right. I don't think any of us want to piss anybody off, but I see such passion flowing out of, and that's not to say that anybody else isn't passionate. I just see a lot of passion projects. I think I've posted a couple statuses every so often that are like, hey, you know, I like really, really think Nancy's awesome, and I see all these really passionate, like, A Nightmare on Elm Street fans. Are there any really standout fans from, like, Halloween or Friday the 13th or, like, the Hellraiser franchise that I could, like, add on Facebook and see their passion? But maybe I've added a couple people, but that's all I've really been able to find. Maybe I just haven't looked hard enough. Maybe people didn't tag them, but it seemed like, but that was a couple years ago, that people weren't really like, hey, there's this person and this person and this person, you know. There's just, it just wasn't as, you know, there wasn't as anybody who kind of stands out. But maybe it's because we're involved so much that I can name off several people who are out there who are just really doing something amazing, whether it's glove making or mask making or writing music or making a fan film, or people like us who are just really, really passionate fans. And then again, you know, everybody on my friend list might have been biased because pretty much everybody on my friend list isn't a Nightmare on Elm Street fan. So it's a little swayed there. But, right. You know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Nightmare on Elm Street fans are just more, I'm trying to think of the right word to use.
Nutty as a fruitcake?
Yeah, well, yeah. Hell. Besides, I don't want to say creative. That's a bad word to use. But you are right. Like, I look at my friends list, and I have a couple of hardcore Halloween fans, and I have a couple of hardcore Hellraiser fans. But nobody is doing anything for the franchise. You know what I mean? They're hardcore fans. They watch the movies. They go to conventions. They meet the celebrities. They collect stuff. But they're not doing anything. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So that's kind of, I think, the difference between the series. That's kind of what I think we were getting at with the differences of the series and the fans. You know, no fan is better than another by any means. But I just feel like maybe we just use our passion differently than Halloween fans and Friday the 13th fans.
Well, I also think it comes back down to what you said earlier about the characters, and, you know, with people being able to relate to the characters and people going to conventions, there's a lot more opportunities for cosplay, you know, and that really opens things up for, I don't know, to express their passion, I guess you could say.
Well, here's what Nightmare on Elm Street did. Nightmare on Elm Street, the focus was Freddy, but it wasn't. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's, they put so much more focus on Kristen, on Alice, on Nancy, on the kids of Elm Street. Whereas, yes, if you watch Halloween, and Halloween, I guess Halloween is a little different because, you know, you got Laurie Strode. They really put a lot of concentration on Laurie's character as well. But like Friday the 13th, I mean, for the most part, it's Jason, and it's Pamela in the first one, and then after that, it's a bunch of faceless or nameless counselors. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people I talk to, they're like, oh wait, what was his name? Oh, what was the one counselor's name? You know what I mean? Like, of course, besides your hardcore fans, but I'm just meaning in general, if we're just talking in general, minus the hardcore fans. So that's, I think, is another thing that Nightmare on Elm Street did just so completely differently than Halloween and Friday.
I also think there's been an evolution over the years of A Nightmare on Elm Street fans. Like, when I started going to conventions and dressing up, I think part of the reason why I was able to meet a lot of people so fast was because I was all for Nancy and going out for it. And then I was the only person that I had seen dressed as Nancy at a convention for a long time until Horror Hound in 2015. I'd seen people take photos at conventions dressed as Nancy, but I'd never actually met one at a convention before, despite still going to conventions. And that's when I saw not one, but two, and there were just an increase in Tina's, and I've seen Alice's, and and of course Taryn's, and a couple of Amanda's, and Robert Englund even said it at that convention. He's like, I've just seen more Tina's and Nancy's, and there's a Nancy right there in the room, and all this different stuff. So even Robert has seen the shift in attention to the characters, and I think it's pretty amazing, and I think it says a lot, and I think people have always, I mean, we all agree, love the characters even outside of Freddy. We know everybody's super passionate for Freddy. I mean, FredHeads, come on. Everybody loves Freddy. It's almost like, how can you not love Freddy if you're a Nightmare on Elm Street fan? But there's definitely been more of an outwards display of love and passion for these different characters within the last couple of years than there has been prior to that.
Well, you know, for me personally, like, the thing that I love about the Nightmare movies, and even the characters, you know, you have such strong characters fighting basically an undefeatable villain, you know, I mean, it doesn't matter what you do, you have to fall asleep at some point. So,
Right.
But for me, it's kind of a reminder of, like, life. You know, life is going to throw curveballs at us. It's going to go up, it's going to go down, and we can't really escape it. I mean, we can, but that's just an easy way out, and that's not fair. You know, you got to keep the fight going. You can't give up. You have to just, like, turn your back on fear and keep pushing through it, and push yourself and be confident in, you know, yourself and what you want to do and your goals and your passions, and kind of just, you know, be Nancy.
Which brings me then to the discussion of the characters. I mean, there are a lot of guy characters, but really, Nightmare on Elm Street has a hell of a lot of pretty incredible female characters. I remember when there was some article that came out on Bloody Disgusting. I think it was written by John Squires, and it was talking about how they wanted to make Leatherface a female. Now, I will say this. I don't think turning a male character female is really, I mean, it would be interesting, but I think it's going about trying to bring more women into big roles in kind of a way that I think is not exactly hitting the mark. I think creating just newer characters in new horror that are good characters is what needs to happen. But people were saying during that conversation that, you know, don't demasculate, you know, or emasculate, no, demasculate. Nope. It's so late. My brain is farting. Don't try to make him into a girl. Don't feminize him. Don't do that, you know, don't make him weak. And it was just like, you guys realize that a lot of horror is extremely female driven. Most of the time, it's the female who defeats the killer. I mean, we've got like Jesse Walsh and a little bit of Jacob. I mean, because of the power that Freddy gave him in part 5. But really, it's the females who take him out, and the females who stand up to these male villains. And there's a lot of these incredible women in different ways throughout A Nightmare on Elm Street. You've got Sheila, you've got Debbie, and even though a lot of them lost their lives, I think they're extremely standout characters that are memorable. Like you said, Brittany, sometimes in some of the other movies, people, you're just like, who was that? Or somebody's a secondary character that kind of mingles in with the background, and maybe you mix them up with like part 4 and part 6 or whatever. But a lot of these other characters that surround the main heroine or hero in the Nightmare films are unique in themselves. They all have unique traits, unique stories, and unique ways of dealing with Freddy and each other.
Well, not only that, but all the you know, female characters, they contribute somehow for the main leading character to help fight. You know, with Nancy Nancy had to become who she was to fight Freddie because, after losing her friends. Like, she had to cope and deal with, seeing her best friend get brutally murdered, and it was a very brutal murder. But that helped build her character to be able to fight him. And then when you go into, like, the other movies, like even like Part 3, Dream Warriors, you got Kristen, like she had all her Dream Warrior friends with, helping her, like strong, they were together. And then when you go into like 4 and 5, everybody who, dies, they help, Alice's character develop and grow, and she takes on their traits and personalities. So all of them are extremely important. And even if they like pass, because they're still contributing to the fight, essentially. And going back to like the Leatherface role thing real quick, I just had to throw it out there. I don't think it's a good idea to make him female. I think that's an awful idea. But my favorite Texas Chainsaw Massacre is actually Part 2. And one of the main reasons I love Part 2, I mean, yes, it's, hilarious, and you've got, great characters. Chop Top is probably one of my favorite horror characters of all time. Bill Moseley's genius in that role. But it's Stretch, the female character in that movie. She makes it, like, she fights them, she follows them, like she goes down into like the devil's lair, and then at the end of the movie she is wielding that chainsaw like she is a demon from hell herself, because she's been to hell and back. And that's why that one was always my favorite. So I don't think you necessarily have to like demasculize, these iconic characters. You just need to build the characters around them to really tell a full story.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I know that I recently read a pretty good article on Black Girl Nerds. It was called Representation Isn't Finite and Shouldn't Be Treated as Such. It was just basically talking about how someone might say, we don't have enough women in horror, but then someone comes up and is like, well, have you heard of Ellen Ripley or Nancy Thompson? It's just, there's tons of diversity out there. And it's like, there are 2 points. The first one was, why do you assume I don't know about the existence of diverse characters? And then they were going on to say, like, when they were younger, when people were saying it's manga, not manga, and it's just very condescending, and it's not, the main point of that is, we know. But then it goes into the second one to say, why do you assume that the characters we already have are enough? I mean, we can love anybody, no matter what they look like, whether they're male, they're female. But, like, for me, part of the reason why I love Nancy Thompson so much is because I identify with her, and I think it's really important to be able to have that. And so they ask, why can't we ask for more? I mean, what's wrong with having more? But, like, with that Leatherface, I don't think just turning a male character into a female is going to solve it. I think we just have to create good female characters, good Black characters, good Latin characters, and good Native American characters, good purple characters, whatever, just right off the bat. And, supporting the women in the horror world doing something. So like FredHeads, seeing how many women are involved, it's pretty incredible. Doing something, driving this big project for this massive franchise is incredible. I mean, so it's really important to support that, and I think we just have to create it and not just try to be like, let's just turn Freddie into a woman. Now, I know Robert Englund had suggested something like that for one of the movies, like maybe switch it up a little bit. Maybe Freddie looks different to everybody, but that's part of the story. It's not just making him a woman just to try to fit into some agenda. I think it's more for the story, but like The Babysitter, which I watched recently, I loved that blonde babysitter character. Can't remember her name because I only saw it once, but she was great. She was a great character. American Mary, loved Ginger Snaps. It's those kinds of things where they're just good characters, but they just also happen to be women.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with all of pretty much what you guys are saying. I feel like, I don't know, I almost feel like there's a decline in women in horror, to be honest with you. For character wise and in horror movies. I don't know, maybe it's just because I relate to older horror movies more, and that's my favorite is horror movies of the 80s and like, late 70s, 90s. So maybe I'm drawing from that, but I don't know. I just feel like there hasn't been really any super recent women characters that's really caught my eye and really, you know what I mean, like made me identify with them. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I mean, I watch new horror, definitely. I mean, I'm pretty up to speed with everything. But
have you guys seen American Psycho 2?
Yeah. No. Oh, Mila Kunis. Yeah. Right.
Love Mila Kunis in American Psycho 2.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, that's good.
I really thought that was underappreciated because I love the character. I don't know, I just really enjoyed that movie. I watched it over and over and over again, but that always comes to my mind, and I feel like it never gets any credit.
But again, that's an older movie, though, right? I'm trying to think when that came out.
Yeah, you know me. I'm kind of old.
No, I'm still old school. Totally.
Kim, you are not old.
I'll be 36
no, you're not
next
old,
week. Ah!
You might be old school, but you're not old. But...
Old school. But
I feel old.
I can agree. I mean, I don't know though. I don't want to be. I'm always afraid to like look at modern horror and say, yeah, you know what? There aren't a lot of really strong females. But I don't know. I don't know if they're hiding in indie and they're just not always out there, or because I mean, Kim and I have seen some of the Annabelle. We saw Insidious and. We saw one of the Annabelle movies together.
What was the one we saw with the nun that terrified us?
Conjuring.
Conjuring 2. Yeah, The Conjuring 2.
Yes, The Conjuring 2.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
But like Lynn Shaye's character in Insidious is awesome. I love that character.
I can't for the life of me at the top of my head think of the actress name who plays the main oh gosh.
Elizabeth Warren?
What's her name? Well, Lorraine Warren, the actress who plays Lorraine Warren.
Elizabeth.
She was in the Bates Motel. I think she's just a phenomenal actress. She's one of my favorite actresses probably in modern horror. Granted, she's not really, going out like killing people or anything like that, but she was just perfect in Bates Motel. I don't know if you ladies watched that show, but I absolutely loved it. Everything about it. There were some moments where it got a little slow, but it always picked right back up. But she's just phenomenal, and I love her as Lorraine Warren, and I love that, they're actually using Lorraine Warren on set to kind of consult her story and make it more realistic. But yeah, those movies are good.
Yeah, they are. But I mean, not even so much villain also, but your strong, Nancy type figure. But then again, we don't have a whole lot of, I feel like we don't have a whole lot of modern day franchises. I mean, we do, but they're not to the extent like they were in the 80s.
Besides, slashers, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, besides Saw, there's 9 Saws now, right?
Insidious, or something like that. Insidious might be kind of close, but I don't think it's been as giant line out the door kind of thing on the news.
I think we've been stuck in this paranormal activity kind of state, everybody those
that
kind of
and then
and the kind of realistic even I've seen a lot of horror movies come out recent mainly indie that are ghost hunters going someplace and things go wrong, and there's a lot of that, and it probably has a lot to do with the influence of all the TV shows that have come out in the past 10 years. But I feel like a lot of the horror that's been coming out, it's more almost supernatural based. You got the Annabelles, the evil dolls, and the exorcism movies that all came out in the 2000s, and the paranormal activities with the ghosts, and it all seems very supernatural driven.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
Yeah. I wonder if there's going to be a resurgence in the slashers. I was reading something that talked about that potentially happening, and I wonder if it does, if then we'll probably see some of the characters of old, or if, are we too, couple of things. One, are we too stuck in nostalgia to think, to see the potential in some of these characters? Like, I know everybody loves the girl in You're Next, but she hasn't blown up and been like, people aren't constantly, fawning all over her. I haven't seen her cosplay at a convention. And,
right. Well, see, I think you're onto something, because that is, and it's the same thing with I Spit on Your Grave, the remake. Oh my God, I love her. What's her?
Good.
Sarah.
I don't know her name,
Butler?
But that was a good one.
Yeah.
Sarah Butler, I think. Same thing with that. It was like, she had this kick-ass movie, and she's this, look at her, like her vengeance that she just completely splatters upon these guys, just phenomenal. And a lot of people love that movie, but it's like, what happened to her? I mean, I don't see her in anything else, and I don't, same thing, like I don't ever see anybody cosplay her, her character. Or it's one of those things where I just feel like, I don't know. I definitely think the environment and the world and the times reflect also on what movies are being made. So I think that plays a factor into it also, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
I was just waiting for that. Yeah. I'm curious who your top 5 favorite female leads are in horror.
Yeah, that's a good one. Brittany, you want to go first? Kim, do you want to go first?
I mean, I guess I'll go first. I posed the question.
Shoot.
So, I think I have a pretty good list, and it's funny because I've talked with Anthony about this a lot, especially at conventions. We'll sit there and we'll just talk about all the movies and stuff. But of course, my number one is always going to be Nancy. I think that's probably maybe a given for all of us on there. But and then followed by Nancy, Kirsty from Hellraiser.
Yes.
She's also another character that literally goes to hell and back, so I kind of have a love for her there. Sydney from the Scream movies, of course. I don't know. I've always really liked her character. She was very real. It was a very realistic character for me, and she's just kind of constantly dealing with things and always fighting and always surviving. And then, of course, I already mentioned it, but Stretch, played by Caroline Williams in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. And my last one is actually really interesting because it's not from a horror movie, per se. It's actually from a TV series. But Carol from The Walking Dead.
Oh,
I think Carol is probably one of the most badass women in horror that we have right now.
You are right. Yes, I totally agree with that.
When The Walking Dead first came out, I didn't catch it right away. I was like, oh, I'll catch it when it, is on reruns and stuff. I wasn't really all that excited. And when I first caught The Walking Dead, it was mid first season, and it was actually the scene where Carol has to kill her husband. And, through that movie, through that episode, I caught on, he was abusive towards her. And she just did not hold back. It was years of abuse and frustration and anger just came out. And she let that dude have it. And I was like, oh, my God, they're showing this on TV? And from that moment on, I fell in love with Carol's character. I really could just, she had to kind of transform into this abusive, or not abuse, she wasn't abusive, God, abused woman into this strong fighter. And I think she's probably one of the best characters on that show. Melissa McBride. Woo.
Yeah.
That's a great list.
Brittany?
That's a great list. Okay, so are we doing characters then, right? We're not doing actresses necessarily. Are we doing characters, and are we doing...
I would say characters.
Okay.
Yeah, I meant more so characters, but yeah.
Okay, and then are you doing just leads? Like, I mean,
no, it's anybody, any female in horror.
Okay, well, I didn't know quite where we were going with that, but well, definitely Nancy, of course. Taryn, duh. Is that a question? God, see, I feel like I'm going with so many nightmare nuts. You know what I mean? Like, I almost feel like I need to do 2 different lists. I almost feel like I have to do a nightmare list.
No, but that's okay. I mean, it's
a non-nightmare list.
Yeah, no, keep going.
Sydney. I do have to go to Sydney. I got a special place in my heart for Sydney. Oh my God. I love Laurie. I do love Laurie from Halloween. There's just so many, you know what I mean? And I always want to go with nightmare characters, always. And then Alice from Nightmare, of course. I don't know, I'm kind of all over the place here, guys. And then I'm like thinking about The Walking Dead, because Kim had to bring up Walking Dead, and I'm like, damn it.
I'm sorry, I just love Carol so much.
No, I'm like, I love Michonne and Maggie on you know what I mean? Because The Walking Dead, actually, you know, you do bring up a valid point with that. When we talk about women in horror and we talk about current day horror, we should, you know, kind of touch on TV as well, because it's not just about movies. I mean, TV is at the forefront.
Yeah.
A lot of people, you know, I know a lot of non-horror fans that watch The Walking Dead, right? People that don't even care about horror, they watch The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
And that's a very good base for some extremely strong women. Like, you brought up a great point about Carol. If you look at her backstory and how far she's came from season 1, good God, she's been through the ringer and back. And so is Maggie. You know what I mean? Maggie's lost her husband. She's lost her father. She's lost her sister. These people died right in front of her. You know what I mean? And here she is taking on a new leadership in the show. She's going to be the, you know, pretty much, you know, grooming her to become the new leader of Hilltop, her, you know, home. But
spoilers. See, I just haven't watched the show. I'm sorry. I can't stand zombies.
I'm behind too. But I'll read it.
Well, you guys need to catch up. Jesus. That happened a season ago.
But zombies. I just can't.
Yeah, Dee has a thing about zombies.
Oh, man, see, I love zombies. I could talk about Return of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead. Dude, I could go on about that.
I'm cool with zombies as long as they're not zombies from like 28 Days Later, because they were some ferocious, mad zombies.
They're pretty scary.
I don't care. If they're slow,
so, yeah,
no.
Guys, my list is all over the place. Like I said, I have 2 different lists. I don't know if I could just do 5, but that's kind of, I mean, I threw out my main names that I could think of that, you know, and Debbie, of course, from Nightmare on Elm Street also. So.
Well, I mean, I guess I could say Nancy.
I guess.
No way. I don't believe you.
My list is actually very similar to Kim's, because then my second favorite is definitely Kirsty Cotton, who ironically reminds me a lot of Nancy, especially in part 3, because if you look at her, it just, to me, is so Nancy in Nightmare 3. In that second movie. So I see a lot of the Nancy in her, but I think she's very feisty. I mean, she doesn't hold back when she tells him to go to hell in the movies. And I just love how sharp she is. And then, of course, also Sydney. Bam, bitch went down. I just love it when she punches Gail in the face.
Right.
That's a really good moment. And then after that, mine gets all over the place too, but I love Alice. I mean, when I was growing up, I identified a lot with Alice, kind of being, I mean, I felt I was a little shy, and then I just loved seeing her come out and be like, fucking A, and just curse really hardcore and scream at Freddy and go after him. And she had these really kick-ass powers and a leather jacket and some boots. I mean, she was just really, really cool character. But then the 5th spot becomes kind of hard to fill, because I definitely love Ellen Ripley, but I don't necessarily count Alien as really a horror movie. I still really kind of put it over there with like the sci-fi, so I don't think it counts. But then I've got,
it's kind of on the verge
yeah,
of both.
it is. It's on like that edge, but I really can't, for the sake of me just kind of carrying on my list, can't really classify it as horror. So with that said, potentially the character that I would have to go with would be probably Jennifer Hills from I Spit on Your Grave. I love Camille Keaton when she goes after everybody in that, and I just love her portrayal. I think I Spit on Your Grave is brutal, and I absolutely love that movie. So I will probably say Jennifer Hills.
That's another one where the original and the remake did a very good job with their female leads. Both, you know what I mean? Both of them, and obviously it's two completely different times, but both of them were just so kick-ass in their own right when they come back for vengeance. Such a great movie.
That's a sign of good writing.
Yeah, really. Yeah. So, I mean, what do you guys, we've talked a lot about women in horror. We've talked a lot about the ladies in Elm Street. I mean, what do you guys each think when you see something that a female makes, like whether she's a director or a writer or a producer, or she's all three or whatever, four, maybe she's also the actress. I know that I just was reading and recording a little something on how Heather Langenkamp is now going to be narrating a short called Roadkill, and it's the first film by a writer, director, producer, female filmmaker. And I love seeing female filmmakers. I love seeing like Ashley Blackwell, who is this really thought-provoking writer and woman in the horror world who is lending her voice to the Black women that are in horror, that are really in all these different films that don't get as much spotlight. I mean, what do you guys think about women in horror? I mean, just anything regarding it.
I mean, I'm obviously
here we go, Kim. Here we go.
I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go over you, but yeah, I'm obviously a fan for it. I think it's good to have different perspective. You know, like you can like break it down into like all sorts of crazy psychological terms and get all technical, but I think it's just good to have, I guess, a bit of writer diversity, you know, and for a lot of writers, they pull on personal experiences, and there's definitely personal experiences a female is going to go through, you know, that are different than in a male. So I think adding that perspective is definitely a good thing. I know I guess it's 4 years old now, but that movie Babadook, you know, that was written and directed all by, I believe she even played the lead. I think that's her, if I might be mistaken. But I thought that movie was genius, you know, and it didn't really rely on like a lot of blood or gore or, you know, shock value. It was really just kind of the things that go bump in the night. You know, for me personally, I am a sucker for a good ghost story. So movies like that when I'm alone at night laying in bed, you know, there's a reason why I need a nightlight on somewhere, you know. So those are the things. But I really think that movie specifically worked being written by a woman, because it really tells the story of how she's, you know, trying to protect her son from basically the boogeyman. And I think, you know, being a mother and a female, you know, you can kind of pull on those heartstrings more to tell that story, you know, that specific, you know, this is a horrifying thing for any mother to have to go through, to, you know, potentially lose their child to a demon, basically. I don't think a male could have written that as well, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think definitely it's extremely important to have that female voice in the horror genre, because we are going to draw different stories. We are going to draw different ideas up than what a lot of males can. Because we're different. We're different species. We're different genders. We go through different things. Our brains are different. We think different. So with that being said, I just feel like if you want to make horror more versatile, then we need to have more women voices. And that's, not just the only reason. But I love seeing it's inspiring. Oh my gosh, it's inspiring. Like, I've been inspired by you guys through FredHeads. Like, FredHeads has given me just a new creative outlook on life, and just I feel like all these doors open. And it's because of FredHeads, and it's because of you guys, which is also in turn because of, Paige, because this is her idea. This is her baby. And so when I see all these, and like, I think what you said, Diandra, also, not just filmmaking and writing, but women that are making, buttons, and they're making, bath and body horror themed stuff, right? I mean, it's the creative juices just start flowing, and it goes so much farther than just filmmaking. And that's just been awesome to see. Like, I love going to conventions and seeing all the vendors and seeing how many women are behind that, making all this stuff, and whether it's t-shirts and, like I said, magnets and buttons and candles,
creepy dolls, and
yeah
or Nancy dolls.
Right. It's awesome. And it's very inspiring. And it's just, I don't know, it gives me a warm case of the fuzzies in my heart, for sure, to see all this, and to see, how, I do. I feel like women, I feel like I feel like we're taking over the horror genre slowly, slowly, and behind the scenes more so.
No, we're just taking over in general.
Period.
Let's face it.
Period. No pun intended.
A bit of a woman's touch in their life.
Yeah. Because I've seen a lot of women on Twitter who are I have seen a lot of scholarly women who have these podcasts that they're all about being academic when it comes to horror. And if there's one thing I'm a sucker for, first of all, love when it's woman run, but I love scholarly analysis of horror movies and really delving into these subject matters. And I love to see some of these podcasts and these Twitter individuals who are out there delving into it with their voices, and not being like, oh, you want me silenced? Well, tough shit. I'm out here and I'm going to say whatever the hell I want because I have my opinions and my voice to lend to the world. And I love hearing them, and it has inspired me more and more to lend my voice. Because I've been doing stuff online for a while, and before I used to be very, very careful with what I would post and what I didn't post, and I still have that to a certain extent, only because I think there's certain stuff that you definitely shouldn't share. But I'm more I'm not as afraid to, if somebody's overstepping their boundaries, be like, hey, dude, back off, or hey, chick, you said that, I really don't think that's right. Or providing thoughts because of some of these people out there who are doing that and who are not afraid.
Let's face it, Dee. There's just crazy people in the world.
There are a bunch of crazy people. That is absolutely for sure. No matter where they are, they might be wearing a normal face, but guess what? They're all nuts. But we're the right kind of nuts. That's why nuts of a cluster. I don't know. I don't know how to finish that.
Because you were going to try and say birds of a feather flock together, but you were trying to use nuts, right?
I was going to stop with like Buster, but then I felt Nut Buster. That just sounds so wrong.
No, that's the woman's job.
That's really good. Oh boy. Oh my goodness.
Okay, we went off a little bit, but that's okay.
That's what this is for. That's why we're here. But all right. Well, we have talked a lot about FredHeads and women in horror and A Nightmare on Elm Street. Before we go, do you guys have any final thoughts to share with the world, maybe something you've learned while being involved in FredHeads or doing your own projects, or just simply existing and going through life that you might want to bestow maybe on somebody else out there who needs a little bit of encouragement or just something about life or anything that comes to mind right now.
Well, me personally, I have to say, when we started doing Don't Fall Asleep, Heather gave us some really good advice. And for me personally, I've had to repeat her words over and over and over and over and over to remind myself daily why I'm doing what I'm doing. And she told us, I don't know if you remember, she said, don't take no shit from anyone. Don't take any shit from anyone. And that's a true testament because, especially with FredHeads, it's a lot of fun, don't get me wrong, but, it is very stressful. It's very stressful to put things together and to make sure we're doing something that's really going to make a difference and, get people excited and want to be involved because, that's the basis of the documentary. It's getting the fans involved and having us kind of unite more, a nightmare community specifically within the horror community. And, there's a lot of ups and downs with it and a lot of drama and a lot of stress. And when I find myself like stressing out, I'm just like, you remember what Heather told you? Remember what Heather told you? Yeah. And I think that's really important is if you really believe in something, don't let people put you down and tell you you're wrong or that's not right. Or, if you really feel like you're doing the right thing, just keep pushing forward and don't give up. Don't give up the fight. Be Nancy.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of what I was going to say is just to never give up. I mean, and I know for me, FredHeads has inspired me to want to be more involved and to do more with the horror genre. Not that I've, ever had a lack of that, but it's kind of, you get to a point where it's like nothing's going your way. You're kind of feeling lost. You don't know what direction to take. You don't know really what you're doing per se. And then all it takes is for you to meet just an awesome group of friends through a convention. And they are kind enough to invite you in to their project. And you lend what wonderful ideas you have to them. And together you share these projects and you can create this awesome dream that, because of the horror genre and because of Nightmare on Elm Street, you almost feel like you have a new purpose in life, and that's awesome to think that I'm 30, I just turned 30 in December and I feel like I'm just now kind of getting a foothold into this little world. And I hope to be more part of more projects and to do more projects. And it's an awesome feeling. It really is. So yes, never give up and keep pushing on, and you never know what's around the corner.
Yeah. And I would say, if you really love something, just to go after it because you never know how it's going to change your life. Because for me, it was just a matter of, hey, where are all these Nancy fans? And then just going out and just doing stuff. And it was not even like I just had one goal, and that was just to get more attention for Nancy. And I feel like I've watched Heather's line grow. I've seen Nancy cosplayers. I feel like part of my mission is complete. And, but just to, first of all, one of the other things is that, it doesn't matter how old you are, what you look like, where you are in this world, you can make a difference. And so you just have to take that first step in the right direction and figure it out. Where does your passion take you? And like you said, Kim, sometimes, I know with FredHeads, there have been certain people at certain times that we've come across in groups or outside commentary from somewhere else that people have said, why would you do this? Why shouldn't you do it this way? If I was doing it, I would do it. And it's just like, you know what? Look, buddy, I know you have how much you love A Nightmare on Elm Street and whatever the heck you do with it, but you can't do that This is how we're doing it. Good luck with your version, if you're even going to do one. And, you know, live and let live. So sometimes you just have to say no. You just have to hold your ground, and you have to understand what's worth it. And just to really, I think the first thing is to just take that first step. And if you really love something and you feel like you want to do something in it, just go that way. And it's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be easy. But if you stick to it and you let your passion drive you, and you really give a damn about people and what you're doing, and you're not really doing it for yourself, like I know so many other people out there are, things will go well, because I've seen it. I've seen many people who are out there for themselves have bad things happen. But I've seen a lot of people who really give a damn about their mission or give a damn about other people. And they're the ones that I've seen continue to find success. And so I think that that's the big thing, is to just let your heart guide you, but also have your mind to be there to be like, that person over there telling you how you should run your project. No. You know, they're not involved. They're being sour over there with their other group of people and their stupid message board over there. Whoops, maybe I crossed the boundary with that. But sometimes you just can't listen to them, because if you want to be inclusive and you're taking the time to do what you feel is right, then do it. So
yeah, there's always going to be negativity, you know, I mean, in anything you do. And
Right.
you also just have to remember, you know, karma's kind of a bitch. So don't cross your path.
Right.
And, you know, and just keep dreaming so Freddie will come visit you.
And then keep wishing that everybody else that you don't like, that's trying to tell you how to live your life, also dreams of Freddie, but Freddie's on your team. Well, in any case,
and like Sheila says, mind over matter.
Exactly.
Yes.
That is the big
Yes.
thing. That is the big thing. Well, it has been a pleasure having you guys on. I really appreciate it, and I know that I will definitely see you guys around for FredHeads Talk. And to everybody out there listening, make sure you check out at FredHeads Doc on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram, #FredHeads, #FredHeads Doc. Check out the Indiegogo, and don't forget to submit your story and to check out all of the amazing FredHeads who have shared what they have thus far, their pictures, their posts, their anecdotes on the FredHeads social. So I will catch you guys around. Have a wonderful evening.
All right, ladies. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.